And we're live. This is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I hope you're feeling a little bit upbeat. It's a new year, and I hope everybody's really feeling like they got some resolutions that they're hoping to keep up with and made some plans for the year that they're excited about. And also, I imagine some of you are dealing with some of what lingers after the holiday season comes to an end, and the Christmas and Hanukkah and other holidays you might celebrate are past, and New Year's Eve is come and gone. And then sometimes for some people there's a letdown. So if you're feeling a little bit let down and you want to feel upbeat, stay tuned. Hopefully I give you 45 minutes of uplifting conversation. I hope that you find what we talk about today to be something that you really feel good about, and you feel really comfortable with the show, and that you're learning something and it's worth your time, and that you feel engaged. So that's my opening. I'm Chuck Wolf. This is the Emotion Roadmap. The tagline's take the wheel and control how you feel. The goal is to give you some tools to navigate life's white water. You know, there's a lot of challenges that we experience over the course of our lifetimes, and particularly in times when there's a lot of change and uncertainty, and we're certainly living in a time like that. All kinds of strange things happen over the course of the last maybe several years, maybe last decades, but a lot of change is underway. Whether it's what just happening on the international front, whether it's artificial intelligence or quantum computing, or all kinds of changes that we might be experiencing, I'd like to be able to provide a kind of a safe haven where you can come and talk about what's going on for you. And if anybody would like to call in, the show's design really is about people calling in. And so if you're listening, and if you're comfortable, or if you're just concerned about something in your life, something with someone at home, something with something at work, someone at work, something in your community, whatever it is that might be keeping you up at night, not allowing you to fall asleep, a decision that has to be made, one that isn't clear about what's the best decision, or even if you know what the best decision might be, there might be some attached outcomes, some side effects of that decision that are going to be problematic for people you care about. And so if you've got something on your mind that's really concerning, where you're uncertain or doubtful, or just really wondering, what should I do here? Maybe it's a conversation you have to have. Maybe it's with someone in your family, it's a loved one that you're finding you don't agree with on something important, and you're having a hard time talking about it, and it's keeping you both up at night. Or maybe it's a family thing, and it's keeping everybody kind of at their wits' ends. Actually, I read something the other day, and I thought I'd share it with you today. It's a conversation between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Now, if you're not familiar with American history, those were two presidents who both signed the Declaration of Independence, but who both really, really admired and respected one another, but had fundamental disagreements. John Adams really wondered a lot about what would happen to this country, our country, way back in the 1700s, if we really let democracy rule. He wasn't comfortable with just letting everyone out there make decisions for all of us based on majority rule. He was really concerned about that. And Thomas Jefferson was concerned about centralized government and too much control going to the federal government and controlling what happened to people in their lives. Now, they came together and signed the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, but they really pulled apart after that. And yet, as they came close to the age where most people didn't live past the age that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson got to, when John Adams wrote to Thomas Jefferson, and he said, "You and I ought not to die before we explain ourselves to one another. You and I ought not to die before we explain ourselves to one another." So if there's somebody you love and that's somebody you care about, and you're not talking to them right now, or you haven't really been comfortable around them in recent times, and you want to talk about that, give me a call. This emotion roadmap I created was part of the pioneering efforts that began in the 1990s. I got to work with the pioneers who introduced emotional intelligence to the world, really. In 1990, Jack Mayers, who was a guest on my show not too long ago, if you've been listening, you know Jack was on my show, had a wonderful conversation about the history of emotional intelligence. And Peter Salovey, who I just wrote to, and I'll share a little bit about my correspondence with Peter. Peter was the chairperson of the Department of Psychology when I met him. But he rose inside Yale, which doesn't really happen in universities, very prestigious universities, where somebody continues to just keep rising until they get to be the president. And that was Peter's journey in the last number of years. Anyway, so Peter and Jack introduced to the world what their concept of an ability-based model of emotional intelligence was. And it basically said that we have abilities outside of our analytic abilities that are different. They're actually even measurable. It's the ability to identify how you're feeling, how you personally are feeling, and how someone else is feeling. How well do you do that? And they said, we all have this ability to do that, but the ability levels change, and the differences matter. So, for example, I might be really good at knowing what you're feeling when you're wondering about whether you should call or not, whether you should seek any help or not. And I want to try and figure out how to use the emotions I'm trying to generate to make you feel comfortable calling. That's the second ability they talked about, the use of emotion. What feelings create the best circumstances for you to be successful with what you're trying to do? What feelings facilitate the kind of thoughts and behaviors that you want to see happen? There are feelings specifically for certain situations that are better than other ones. The third ability was understanding how emotions work. Emotions follow certain rules. An example is if you're irritated just a little bit by something someone's doing, if you're a child and you're listening, you might be irritated with your brother or your sister. They're doing something that they know annoys you, and you ask them to stop. But instead of stopping, they do more of it. And you get even more irritated, and maybe you get angry. Could even go to rage, possibly, if you're already upset about other things, perhaps. So emotions following certain rules is that we often live in a continuum of emotions, so that if something is irritating to us and it continues, it's going to go up the scale of anger and become more intense. That's what we mean by emotions have follow certain rules. But it's also true, and this is from my addition to this field of emotional intelligence, is that it isn't just important to know how the rules work for emotions. It's also really important to understand that the rules for emotions may not work the same for you as they do for your brother or your sister or your partner or your parent or your coworker or your boss. So when you think about how emotions work, you want to think about how they work for the person you're trying to communicate successfully with, if you're trying to get some kind of behavior change or accomplish something with that person, and you need them to feel a certain way. And finally, the last thing they said was important to understand about emotional intelligence was that it had to do with how we manage emotions, our own and others. Now, what do you think John Adams was writing when he wrote to Jefferson and said, hey, I think you and I ought not to die before we explain ourselves to each other. And while I read the letter, it was filled with all kinds of references to philosophical thinkers and writers. They were both brilliant men, well-learned, well-read men. And the conversation, essentially, what John was trying to create in Thomas Jefferson, I believe, in terms of the feeling he wanted, was an openness to communicate, despite all the angry letters and newspaper clippings and articles that had gone back and forth, citing why they felt so strongly about their own point of view. John Adams didn't want to go to his grave without Thomas Jefferson knowing how much he appreciated and respected him. And he wanted both of them, not necessarily to agree, but to just truly understand each other's point of view. That's so true in today's world, too, I think. That's why I'm talking about it. Again, if you're just tuning in, I'm Chuck Wolf. My show's The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I've been operating a live stream with Simsbury Media. And Cole, the fellow who's setting this up, has been very successful in figuring out how to make this work. And we're thinking that maybe you want to call in and share something going on for you. I'm going to give you the number, but you can also, if you're watching this, you can see it on the screen. And you could call in and you could ask me. Again, I'm Chuck. Just call me up and say, Chuck, this is what's going on. This is what I'm doing. And I'm going to say to you, okay, tell me how you're feeling. Let's identify how you're feeling. That's that first ability. Let's understand what you want to feel based on what you're trying to get done. And I'll help you with that. That's the second ability, the use of emotion. The third ability is understanding. So how do we get you from what you are feeling and anybody else that might be involved to what you want to feel? How do we do that? That's understanding. And then the managing piece for me, the way it works in terms of trying to change your feelings or someone else's, and you're the one who's going to instigate it. You're the one who's going to be responsible for making it happen. Then I'm going to ask you, of the strategies and ideas and the formulas that we've talked about for how to get the change that we're looking for, is there something that you know that you actually can do and that you're actually excited about doing? Do you have the time, the skill, the energy? If it costs, do you have the money? Sometimes these things just simply take time, but they often also take like a skill. And I want to help you build that skill. So if you're listening to this show and you're going to see how this works, the more callers I have that ask me about situations in their lives where they're having some challenges, the better this show is for everybody. So let me give you the number. If you're listening and you got something, I'd love for you to call in. So the number on your screen, and again, if you're not seeing it on screen, you're just listening, I'm going to say it a few times just so you can get it and do it. It's 754 900 9800. There's a pin to put in afterwards, but I'm going to say the number a couple more times. 754 900 9800. One more time. 754 900 9800. And if you made it that far, the pin that you have to put in is then 497 416 343, and then press the pound sign, and you'll be talking to me that fast. So I'll give you the pin again. 497 416 343 and the pound sign. Okay. One more time, and then I'm back to talking to you. 754 900 9800. If you get that far, then the pin 497 416 343 and the pound sign. Okay, so I'm now going to talk to you a little bit about things that have happened in the course of my shows, because I've been doing this kind of programming for a lot of years, actually, not on YouTube, but on a radio station where I continue to do some work. But my live radio show now is actually going to something different. I'm actually going to work these days on what I would call a local radio station here in Hartford, Connecticut, the Trinity College radio station. And the Trinity College radio station is rtcfm.com. Well, you can put the W in front of it. WRTCFM.com. And you can listen to me at 2:15 on Thursday if you enjoy the conversation I'm having. When I go on the radio in the Trinity College radio station, I'm on with my friend Lou Pomalis, who has a show called 50 Shades of Jazz. And if you like jazz, Lou is a great radio programmer. And I'd suggest tuning in at 1 o'clock when Lou's show starts. I join Lou's show at 2:15, also for 45 minutes. So this show, my YouTube streaming channel, is 5 o'clock to 5:45. on Tuesdays or Mondays, depending on the week and when I'm available and when Cole's available. Okay, so what else do I want to talk to you about today? Believe, if you're on the channel and you're listening, after this is over, I suggest that you look around for my best wishes for everyone, an exceptional new year for everyone. It's a little conversation I wanted to post that invites everybody to think about how it feels to be the other. Actually, if you're listening and you've ever had that experience where you felt like you were the other, what do I mean by the other? It's when you feel like, hey, I may not belong here. Or I don't think people like the group that I belong to, the tribe I'm a member of. If I'm a person of color, or I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community, or if I'm Jewish, or Palestinian, or Muslim, or evangelical, or if I'm a white male Christian these days, I might not feel like I belong anymore, or that I ever did in this republic, this democracy, this nation that we're part of. And I've felt that at times myself, and I suspect you have as well. I think a lot of people, no matter who they are, at times might feel like the other. I remember I was quite fortunate, and you'd think that quite a privileged background must have been, because I had a chance to go to Harvard at one point. But I was from a working class family. I wasn't rich. I wasn't wealthy. My parents didn't go to college. And going to Harvard was wonderful, but at times I didn't really feel like I fit, because so many people there had come from very wealthy families, from generational wealth, from families for years and years and years that had been wealthy, with backgrounds where they went to the best schools, had the best education, the best teachers, and also rubbed elbows with others in similar situations to themselves. I had none of that. And yet here I was in Harvard feeling quite proud that I was there, but like I didn't always fit. Other times I felt like I might not fit too. Have you ever felt like you might not fit? If you have, I'd love for you to call and just talk with me a little bit about it, because I think we've all felt it at times. I felt it. It's a funny story. It's a little bit vulnerable story. When I was a young kid, I remember I had some friends, and we had all got the day off. It was a teacher development day, and we all had the day off from school. And a group of my friends, people I thought were really good friends of mine, decided they would go to Boston, Massachusetts. I lived in a place called Sharon, Massachusetts, and there was a train station in Sharon, and you could go on the train to Boston. And I believe it was 5 of my friends got on that train station and went to Boston, and apparently had a wonderful day. Only I found out about it the next day. No one had told me they were going. And when I saw one of my friends, who was the organizer of the trip, he said, "Hey, Stan, I understand you guys went to Boston yesterday. Gee, how come you didn't call me?" And he said, "Oh, sorry about that, Chuck. There was no room on the train." And I said, "Oh," and I walked away. I thought about it a long time. What did it mean, no room on the train? How could the train not have any room? Obviously wasn't a true story. And that's a time I felt like the other. I didn't feel like I fit. I thought my friends weren't really my friends. Now, have you ever felt like that? You know what that feels like? It was a sad feeling. It was a disappointed feeling. The other friends, I think, felt bad about not including me. They didn't know that Stan hadn't talked to me and invited me. So Stan and I maintained sort of a friendship over the years, but not as close as we once were, at least in my mind. I don't know that he ever felt that we were close at all. So I tell you the story, not because I don't have friends, but I've had a moment where I felt like friends I thought I had didn't really want me part of their group. Again, I'm Chuck Wolf. We're talking about the Emotion Roadmap. and how you take the wheel and you control how you feel. Have you ever felt like the other? If you want to talk about that at all, give me a call, because I'm hoping, what I hope, and if you look at this little New Year's greeting I put up on my website, it's like 3 minutes long. Because I know attention spans aren't very long these days, so it's under 3 minutes, so it won't take a lot of your time. But it's a short video about having hope, that we don't need to make somebody else feel like the other. It's part of human. It's part of the human race. It seems to have a need to belong to tribes, to somehow identify with certain groups, and to somehow need for our group to be better than some other group or many other groups. Somehow to elevate ourselves, somebody else has to be down. And I think we can be better than that. I think we can be the best possible version of ourselves by being better than that. And so I want to talk to you about sometime maybe that you thought somebody was being the other, and you did something about it. You acted in a way that you invited them in. You made them feel included. You welcomed them in. You made them feel like they were part of the group that you were forming or had, that they fit. They didn't need to feel excluded. And that doesn't mean that you have to invite everybody to do everything all the time with you, but you recognize when somebody's feeling like the other, and you're working really hard to make sure nobody feels that way. That's what I'm trying to do today in talking with you. So give yourself the opportunity to be the best possible version of yourself. Recognize where we may have biases that we know about. There's a lot of us, from the time we're born, I believe, we begin to identify with, what street do I live on? Who lives on my street? Who's in my neighborhood? How does my neighborhood compare to the other neighborhoods? What about my town? How does my town compare to the other towns? What about my state? What about my sports teams? Right? I'm very excited, by the way, about the New England Patriots and the way the Boston Celtics are playing. I mean, nobody expected either one of those teams to be any good this year. And they're both playing at such a high level. It's so much fun, because that's one of my tribes. And I don't need your tribe. If you care for another team, I don't need your tribe to be down. I don't need to make my teams better than yours. But I'm celebrating a winning season, and I hope at times you have a winning season to celebrate too. I want to see all of us be supportive and want everyone to win. And if we do win, that we don't win at the expense of someone else or some other group. I just think there's so much room for us to improve. That's why I started with John Adams. He was saying to Jefferson, we have different beliefs. We'll never believe the same thing about the human race. But Jefferson was a believer that human beings could be the best possible version of themselves in a democratic situation where people did what the most people thought was the right thing to do. That only works when everybody's trying for everybody to win. And it can work wonderfully in that circumstance. But it's hard to make that work, because as soon as there's jealousy or envy, or somehow you feel like, hey, they're not part of us because we're the cool kids. We're the in crowd. We're the people that dominate our campuses and colleges. We're the people in the company that don't have to worry about being let go. We're in the inside circle. We know we're okay. Try to reach past your own boundaries. Try to reach past and out to others to make everyone feel like they're welcome, they're included, and they're cared about. I've said this before in other places, but I'll say it here. It seems relevant. There's a lot of push for empathy these days. The ability to feel what somebody else feels, or at least understand how another person feels. And I had a conversation one time with Dan Goleman. Those of you that know the field at all about emotional intelligence know that Dan Goleman is the most prolific author out there. He's written the most books about emotional intelligence and is really well known for his writings. Dan's not a researcher himself, but he is a deep thinker and he is a brilliant writer. And one conversation I happened to have when Dan and I were in the same room, we both belonged to this group called a Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence in Organizations. It's a group of people, several hundred people belong, but there's like a core group of about 25, 30 people that regularly meet a couple of times a year. And I've been in that group for a lot of years. I'm very thankful for it. And Dan attends somewhat, he used to attend much more regularly, but he likes to come when he's got a new book he wants to write and pick everyone's brain. And one day he was there and talking about empathy. And we were talking about what empathy is. And empathy, generally, most people feel that have studied this, feel that empathy falls into two categories. One is, how do we feel? And how do we know what somebody else is feeling intellectually? Like psychology is all about that, is understanding why a person's feeling a certain way, how it might be hampering their lives, and what the psychologist, the therapist can do to help them to deal with that so it's not as difficult a situation that they're facing, becomes less difficult, and then we're able to handle it and cope. So that's one level of empathy. Understanding what somebody else is feeling and why. That's intellectual empathy. And then actually feeling. Have you ever walked into a room and just felt the tension or felt the joy? And that's emotional empathy, feeling what somebody else feels. And again, some of us are great at these things. Others are okay at it, pretty good. And some of us really are very poor at it. That's the idea of abilities. So some of us are more able to be empathic intellectually and emotionally than others. But all of us, and this is what Dan added to it, Dan said all of us, what matters most about empathy is not that we can feel what somebody else feels or understand what somebody else feels. It's that we care about what somebody else feels. That we care for someone. We care for someone. And I'm suggesting that we start caring for everybody. I realize it's a big reach. But I just think if we all work at being the best possible version of ourselves, what a difference that would make, don't you think? Won't you be willing to try it for a bit? Again, I'm Chuck Wolf. This is the Emotion Roadmap you're listening to. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I appear on the air, on live stream YouTube, through Simsbury Media's help, on Simsbury Media channel as well as on my own YouTube channel. If you want to get on my YouTube channel and you don't know what it is, you go to YouTube and you in the box up on top, or you do search. You type in CJ, C for Charles, J for James, CJ. My last name, WOLFE, Wolf with an E, 5. CJWOLFE 5. And I'm going to give you the number to call again. If you'd like to talk about the idea of the other, what it feels like, if you've ever been that, if you ever help somebody else get past that, love to hear those stories if you got them. The number to call is 754 900 9800. 754 900 9800, and then the PIN 497 416 343 and the pound sign. So it'd be nice if you're willing to pick the phone up and call in. It's always nice to have someone else to talk to. Another voice makes the show for me more interesting, and I'm sure for you as well. But the show is the show. It's about helping you understand the power of emotional intelligence. It's about knowing that there is such a thing as the ability to recognize what somebody else is feeling. Think how important that is. What if you were trying to sell a car or your house or your laptop or something to someone, or an idea? You were trying to sell your idea. Now, this is true for a lot of people. You're often trying to sell your ideas, whatever it is you do for a living or whatever you do in life. You always have opportunities at times where you feel you want to influence somebody else to do the right thing, maybe. What I'm trying to do on this show right now. When we're trying to influence others and we're trying to sell our ideas or a product or a service, how do you do it? Well, you try to understand what is saleable. What about your product or service or idea is meaningful and important that you want to share? So it's in general about the idea or the service or product, whatever it might be. But beyond that, and I think this is really important, if you're trying to sell to somebody else, you want to understand what about your idea or service or product, whatever, is important to them. What will make them care about this and perhaps want it or want to do what you're suggesting? And if you begin to sense that somebody is really resisting the way that you're talking about your idea, product or service, and you recognize that in another person, and you stop and you kind of reevaluate and you think, this isn't working. I can see I'm pushing them away. They seem turned off. And maybe it's subtle. They don't even realize that they're not liking what you're saying, but something in their facial muscles indicates to you that they're beginning to form a frown or look bored or disappointed or disinterested, all of which suggests you're on the wrong track. But what if you begin to see a smile creep up on their face or a head nod, recognizing that that makes sense to me? I care about that. I want to listen more. They lean in a little bit, showing some evidence that they have an interest in what you're talking about. Now you feel like you're on the right track. But if you're not good at judging how people feel, you might push way past the point of no return, where you go down the track and you keep pushing harder and harder and harder, and they've already bought what you were selling or what you were trying to influence. But you went so far and you went so deep, they just turned off at some point and stopped listening. And all they felt like was, man, is this guy ever going to end? Will this ever stop? And while they might have bought something from you or they might have been influenced to do what you're asking them to do, you pushed past it to the point of no return and you got negative feedback, and the result was you lost an opportunity because you weren't good at identifying how another person was feeling, particularly about what you were saying and trying to influence or sell. So I hope you can see how important that is. Now, the truth is you can get better at these things. And there's lots of different ways to get better. And it's so much more fun if I have somebody to talk to about a certain situation that they're facing where this is important and I can actually deal with a real live topical interest. So I'm going to give you that number one more time and see if we get any takers. 754 900 9800. 754 900 9800. And the PIN 497-416-343 and the number sign. Again, I'm Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'm going to be on again. You got another chance at me. It's actually going to be next Monday this month. I'm going to be on next Monday at 5 o'clock, and you can listen to me then. I have a little bit more time left. We have, let's see, it is 5:33. So we got almost 12 minutes left, I guess. And so there is time for a call or two. So let me give you that number one more time. 754-900-9800. And then the PIN is 497-416-343 and the pound sign. What might you call about? Call about the conversation about the other. I would love to talk to somebody about that. How does it make you feel when I talk about that way? Does it bring up any memories for you from the past? Times when you really thought it was important to be part of something and you didn't actually get to belong? Or you felt excluded, left out, uninvited? You want to talk about that with me a little bit, what that's like? I would love to have conversation. And I hope over time we begin to have people calling in about these things. Because, again, I know it's scary to call in sometimes, and you're wondering, should I call? I'd say pick up the phone. You miss an opportunity, and everybody else will enjoy the conversation. So 754-900-9800. And the PIN 497-416-343 and the number sign. Now, I know a lot of times people listen to this show after I'm on the air because 5 o'clock isn't always convenient for you. I get it. But that's when the studio's open. It's convenient time for me and for Cole, so that's when we do it. So I hope we'll get. We actually got some phone calls early on when I first started, and then I kind of went away from the phone calls because it wasn't getting many, and I had some guests on, and so if you're interested, one of the shows I had on was with a fellow named Stephen Kellner. And again, you can look up on my channel, CJ Wolf 5. You can see the conversation with Stephen Kellner. It's about leadership. And Steve does an amazing job talking about why sometimes when you're really good at something and you've been a leader in an organization, you rose to a high level, you're making a nice living, you are competent, people like working for you, and yet you seem unhappy. He talks about understanding what motivates you and why what motivates you is sometimes quite different than what you might be good at. And it's only when you combine the ideas of what energizes and motivates you with what you're good at that you're going to be really happy going to work or whatever it is you do for a living. Because when we combine what motivates us, what energizes, like I'm doing this show, I hope you're feeling my energy and how much I enjoy it. I wish, I wish for a phone call. That would always be great. But I love being able to have this platform to share with you things that I think are important to share. I really value being able to make a meaningful difference in people's lives in a very positive way. And I know talking about inclusion and making more people feel welcome, if you take that on, even if you didn't call, but you're just listening and you get this message and you start looking around and you say, is there anybody I've been leaving out? Is there anybody I know that's feeling like, there's something that they don't seem to feel like they feel welcome? Whether it's maybe at a church or a mosque or a synagogue, you see people that are new that have come in. Do you make them feel welcome, or do you just run and talk to the friends that you've been with forever? When you're in a community, a club, and somebody new joins the club or a new band member shows up, do you just hang out with your buddies, or do you go over and make that new person feel like, hey, it's nice to have you be part of us. You're very welcome here. We love adding new people to our group. Tell us about you. Let us learn a little bit about you and ask us whatever you want about ourselves. What would you like to know about us? It's funny. I had an experience. I had a shuttle take me back and forth from a dealership the other day when I had my car worked on. Now, in that shuttle ride, this is so interesting, I think. On the conversation going from the dealer to my home, there was one driver and a different driver on the way back. The driver I had on the way out talked nonstop about himself. I thought to myself when I got out of that car, there is nothing that this person knows about me. Doesn't know my name. I mean, he might have had my name on a pad, so he might have known my name. He knows nothing about who I am. He just wanted to talk. Now, he was an older person, retired, and my guess is this was a chance for him to have some social life. That's why he took the part-time job as a driver. Then I had a young man who, really interesting fella, who was working on doing this to work to create a career for himself and also going online to school. He'd had a year as a freshman in a dormitory, and he partied a lot and had a lot of fun, and he did pretty well in classes, but he just felt, I can do better than this. I don't really want to party so much. I'm more serious than that. And anyway, so I got to talk with him, and he asked about me, and we had a wonderful conversation and knew a lot about each other at the end of it. It was only a 20-minute ride. But think about you. Are you talking about you all the time, or are you really interested in the other? Are you interested in knowing who the other is, making the other feel welcome, making the other feel important? These are things I think are really important for all of us to pay attention to. When you're at home at the end of the day with whoever you go home to, is it just you wanting to tell them about your day, or do you have something you want to hear from them? Do you make them feel like you want them to feel heard, and as Dan Goleman said, and mostly cared about? I love that. It isn't so much how skilled you are at knowing what somebody's feeling or sensing or emotionally connecting with somebody else with what they're feeling. What's most important, what's most authentic and meaningful is that you care about what somebody else is feeling. So if you've got anybody in your life that might be the other, if you're feeling like the other, by the way, if you are feeling like the other, you're not necessarily without tools also. Again, if you wanted to call, we could talk about that a bit, and I could help you with that, because what I help people to think about and do is to change feelings, their own feelings and others. We have so much more power than you might imagine about what we can do with our own emotions and our ability to influence other people's emotions. So that's essentially my show. I've got 5 minutes left. If you want to call in, I'll give you one more shot at this. 754 900 9800. 754 900 9800. The PIN 497 416 343. So I'm guessing at this point, we're done. We're not going to have a phone call. Although I was hoping we'd get one tonight. Maybe next time, if you think about it and you got something you may want to talk about, think about how you want to talk about it. You don't have to give me, I like to ask for your name just so I have something I can address you by. But you don't have to give me a real name. It's not about that. When you call in, should you call in, it's about helping everyone understand how this emotion roadmap essentially looks at how are you feeling, how do you want to feel, what would be ideal to feel, how do we get you from what you are feeling to what's ideal, what are you able and willing to do of the strategies we talk about. Do we have one that will really work for you? And when you feel like you've got something that's going to work, boy, you're excited to go and try it. That's what I like to leave people with, is the idea that I can help you get past whatever blockage you might have around whether you should make the decision this way or that way. I'll help you make some criteria, put some criteria in place that helps you decide. I can't make the decision for you, but I can tell you how to think about it, how to feel about it, and help you to cope more effectively with tough decisions, tough conversations. Tough conversations, I like to think, hey, in a tough conversation I'm going to have, I want to know who the other person is, how they're feeling coming into this conversation, and I want to think about how I'm feeling coming into it. And if it's not how I want to feel, I want to think about a conversation that's tough in 3 parts. How do I want to open here? How do we want to start? What's the tone I want to set for me and for them? I don't want to just talk. I want to listen too. I want to know whatever I need to say to them, how are they hearing that? Is it the way I want them to hear that? So when I'm talking about what I need to say to them, after I've set the tone and done a good job with that so that we have an openness to at least listen to one another, and I'm having this conversation in the tough part, I want to be really focused and tense, watching to make sure that they're hearing it the way I want them to hear it, in a way that's supportive and helpful for us moving on, getting past this to a better place. And then at the end, I want to feel like, hey, we both appreciated our openness, our honesty, our ability to listen to one another. And while maybe we agreed or maybe we still disagree, we were respectful and it's appreciated on both ends. And we can come back and talk about it again if we think that's going to be helpful later on. So I think I'm pretty much at the point where I'm going to close. I want to say I hope you had a great New Year's. If you had some resolutions and you want to talk about them next week, about ones that are tough to keep, because a lot of them are really hard to keep, I can help you with that. Or I can help you make a resolution if you're trying to figure out what you want to do in the year ahead that works for you, that makes a difference, that makes life feel like it's worth living, and that it's uplifting. I hope you felt that the show's uplifting. I hope I gave you some things to think about that make your life better, and make life better for those around you. Make everybody in your family feel like they're included, they belong, and they're welcome, even when they disagree with you politically or any other way. Make people that you love know that you love them. Make them feel welcome and included, even if you disagree. Like John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, you may never agree on the things that are important about politics, but you have a respect and a dying admiration for one another. That's important too. So with that, I'm going to close and say thank you very much. You've been listening to The Emotion Roadmap. I'm Chuck Wolf. You've been listening to The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And again, I'll be on next Monday at 5 p.m. and I hope I get a call or two.